We'll begin this meeting. Welcome to all of you. I'll let you know who our guests are from the city. Still letting a few people in, by the way. And then we'll get started. I'll turn the meeting over to Noah Fleischman first from the Office of Councilmember Mike Bonin, CD11. I think he'll have some updates for us and he'll answer some of the questions that were sent in advance that he is able to answer. Those questions were posted online and they were also sent out with our MailChimp. So hopefully everybody got a chance to see what the general concerns of the community were, what the questions were that we had passed on to our guests to try to answer. And since we do have people here from the city as well as fire, parks, LAFD, and LAPD, I figure we can get some of those questions answered by each of these people as their work impacts the questions. So just to let you all know, Noah Fleischman is on the call from CD11. Brian Espin is on the call from LAPD. He's our senior lead officer. Sonia from the Department of Recreation and Parks, Sonia Young Jimenez is on the call. Jasmine Dolat-Shahi is on the call. She's the senior director at the Pacific Palisades Recreation Center, which will be overseeing the park. Chief Joseph Everett from LAFD is on the call. Sergeant Scott is on the call. Sergeant Scott Alpert. Tamar Galatzen. Tamar, let's see if you're on the call yet. Yes, Tamar is on the call from the Office of the City Attorney. She leads the Neighborhood Prosecutor Program, and I believe Joe Losarelli is on the call. No, not yet, from the Rangers. And then we have the Senior Maintenance Director for the park as well that will be meeting tonight, and we appreciate Sonia bringing him on. Just letting another couple of people in, and then as soon as they join, Noah Fleischman, I shall hand the floor over to you. We'll have you go first. Let us know what's going on with any updates about the park, and then also any questions that you can answer, and general remarks as you see fit.
Great. Well, thank you so much, Miriam. Good evening, everybody. My name is Noah Fleischman. I am Los Angeles City Council member Mike Bonin's district director. Was actually previously the Pacific Palisades field deputy, so very familiar with many of the faces on this call. And I just want to thank Miriam and everyone else from the PPCC that helped organize this call. For many of the folks that are immediately impacted by the park, and for many of the folks that have lived in the canyon around it, in the Palisades for decades, that have heard about this park, been very interested in it. I'm very happy that Along the Wait will actually finally be opening it. And I'm very happy that some of my colleagues from the city, from LAPD, Rangers, Rec and Parks, LA Fire Department, are able to be here to answer some of those questions that I'm not going to be able to, which is based on looking at some of them. I will say just right off the back, things that are safety related, I'm going to have to defer to the experts in LAPD and the Rangers. Things that are operational related to the park, I'm going to have to defer to the experts that are in Rec and Parks. And for things that are about fire safety related, particularly to the park, I'm going to have to defer to the experts with Chief Everett. But just generally, the one big update that I have is that the Bureau of Engineering, who are the project managers for this park, and their contractor Ford have been working truly day and night. They've been working overtime almost 7 days a week over the last 2-3 months to make sure that this park gets done on time, which our schedule for this was to get it done in 2022. I know it keeps getting pushed back month after month, but we really wanted to get done 2022. Definitely want to get done before the holidays, so that people can enjoy it as a recreational resource over the holidays. And the plan, as everybody knew, that was posted on the website, was that the park was going to be opening on December 3rd, this Saturday. I've been speaking with some folks at the Bureau of Engineering that are doing landscape and working on it. Unfortunately, just because of the rain that may have already started tonight and tomorrow morning, the sod area of the park where the event was going to be held, it is going to end up becoming almost like a wet shag rug with some of the rain. So we don't think that it's going to be feasible to have the event this Saturday. I've spoken with Rec and Parks. I've spoken with the Wolfberg family and the the Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee on this, and everybody is all right and understanding with that. We're postponing the date only by a week. So, oh, my apologies. My cat wants to be part of this announcement as well. There we go. That might happen more than once, so my apologies. that we're going to be postponing the grand opening a week. So the new grand opening date will be Saturday, December 10th, still at 10 a.m. at the same location at the sod grass field. So I know that this might be a disappointment for some that were really looking forward to it and that had plans around this. However, I think that this is in everyone's best interest to really make sure that the city and its contractor can, dot their I's and cross their T's with the rain that's going to be happening. With that, there will be an email going out to everybody that RSVP'd for the event on the Eventbrite page, telling them about that change. For all of our speakers and stakeholders, I'll also be letting them know about that grand opening change. But I do expect that there might be some people that would like to come to this event that haven't, that might not hear about the date changing. So for those of whom that have, networks, community leaders, stakeholders that were interested in this event, I would truly, from the bottom of my heart, greatly appreciate it if you could send out, a little newsletter and email blast to them, people that you're talking about, just kind of spread the word. Because if there's one thing that the Pacific Palisades incredibly excels at, it is messaging around the community and spreading news. So I would greatly appreciate if everybody spread this positive news. So with that, I would greatly appreciate Miriam taking questions in advance. Like I said earlier, I'm going to try and avoid questions that I'm not a subject matter expertise on and defer those to the departments that are graciously on this call as well. The first hot button issue that I believe people had questions about was the signage and operating hours of the park. To be perfectly clear, since the envisioning of the park, it has always been that it will operate only from sunrise to sunset. And when the park is opened on December 10th, the signage and operation hours of the park will be sunrise to sunset. The park will be closed from sunset to sunrise. Operationally, if you have questions about how are people going to leave the park, things like that. The park is set to a timer where the gates open at a certain time, close at a certain time, based on sunrise, sunset. For those of whom that are in the park, after the gates are locked, there's a push bar on the inside that folks should be able to push open, and the signage will reflect that. For people that are interested in that particular element of it, Councilmember Bonin last week introduced a motion into City Council to memorialize that in the city's municipal code. Without getting too nerdy, it's a wonky, weird process why the park hours have to be memorialized in the municipal code, but we're doing that process to ensure that there aren't any issues down the road. And we expect that that motion will be waived out of the committee that it was assigned to, that it will hopefully, if it's waived out of the committee by the committee chair next week, it'll be voted on next week as well. And then hopefully the city attorneys that are already aware of it will draft the ordinance for it. In full transparency, my boss is last day in office is December 11th. However, this part of the park project, amongst many other park projects I'm happy to talk about later, are in a extensive 60-page transition memo that we've already shared with Councilmember-elect Tracy Park's team. And I've also given her and her staff my personal email address and phone number in that transition memo. So if they have any specific questions about that motion or the operations, they can definitely contact me about it.
Noah, why were we told that it was going to be opened until 10:30? And is it absolutely positive that that isn't the case?
So excuse me, but we will let everybody speak and then we'll take questions. That's how we usually do it. If that's okay, if everyone wants to chime in, just as soon as someone takes a breath and asks a question, we'll probably never get through all the questions. So no, I'm happy to have you answer that question because I think it's an easy one, but everyone please refrain from jumping in. Just raise your hands and we'll get questions afterwards.
Yeah, and thank you for the question, Blake. Yes, the operation hours will be sunrise to sunset. There was a miscommunication or misunderstanding that the normal default hours for parks are opening at 5 a.m. and closing at 10:30 p.m. And I think that the staff member in the sign shop that mocked up that sign was just all of the default language on it. So I know that there was a photo of a sign that was circulating that was corrected. The general manager of Rec and Parks has assured me that the signage that will be going up in the operation hours will be sunrise to sunset. Yeah. So additionally, I think I already mentioned this a little bit, but for folks that are in the community that have been aware of this project since the 1960s, since the days of Cindy Mizakowski, there is a ton of institutional knowledge and records and things like that, and confusion and the details of this project and what was said, what wasn't said, the history, why things are one way and why things are the other way, which, you know, there will be a little bit of a breakage in some of that knowledge, as there always is with a new council office and new staff. However, I've gone through great lengths to document this, to have various emails, key contacts, community leaders, schematics, plans, all that fun, juicy stuff in a big folder that we're going to be giving over to Councilmember-elect Tracy Park's team. And like I said, my phone number and email address are there. I'm not going to disappear from the scene. So if there is any technical questions at the end of the day, my number one priority is making sure that the community members here are well served by their elected officials. So that's what we're trying to do. I know that was one of the questions. Another question was about standing water. There is a riparian basin that goes throughout the length of the park, and there's different basins throughout it. There are some times where the water will look like it's standing still, but it is actually going down a slope, so the water is always moving. I can't remember the technicality of it, and my apologies that the Bureau of Engineering is not on here, but the water is actually moving. So there's not going to be issues. I do see shaking heads, but I can assure you factually that the water's moving. So there's not going to be any issues with mosquitoes, standing water, or maintenance from a lack of the water moving. And the last question is about—
Noah, sorry, before I let you go on that one, does Vector Control know that this park is opening?
I will have to, I have not personally been in contact with Vector Control. I can always ask Rec and Parks, who are and their maintenance staff, if they're in contact with Vector Control, but I've heard concerns about it being an issue with mosquitoes. But for the crews that have been working there every single day, I've continued to be told that the water is moving and that there aren't any signs of mosquitoes. So I'm happy to address the problem with Vector Control, should it come up, but I think Rec and Parks maintenance will be aware of it. And this is not, there's other pools and ponds and bodies of water that are actually standing still in the city that I think Rec and Parks maintenance probably have experience maintaining that. And the last thing that I had noted in the previously prepared questions was about the perimeter fencing that goes around the park. I was not with the council member at the time when this was discussed. I believe it's my predecessor, Lisa Cahill, and the city attorney's office that were talking about this. This is much more relevant to the neighbors that are directly adjacent to the rim, who have properties that abut the park. During the time talking about how the park was going to both be secured and delineate the city's park property line, there were discussions of, do you want there to be a 6 foot, 8 foot tall chain link fence? People didn't want that. There was no fence at all, so that we can maintain access, view of the park. Some people wanted that, some people didn't. The way that the city attorney's office and the city council landed on this was that it would be a 4 foot fence that delineates the city's property line for liability reasons. And for homeowners, like in any other property instance whose property abuts the city's property, if they choose to build a fence on their own private property line, municipal code allowing, they are more than welcome to, so long as they get the right permits and things like that. But that has been handled by attorneys for the last decade, and this 4 foot fence has been part of the plans that have been approved for many years now. So that is what I have to say about some of the questions that were previously given to me that I was able to tell weren't distinctly about public safety for both LAPD, LAFD, Rangers, or about park operations that I think should go to my colleagues in Rec and Parks, or about the actual construction, which I don't believe my colleague for Bureau of Engineering is on this call right now, but I'm happy, probably because she's still in the canyon working, to be honest with you, but I'm happy to send her any questions. So Miriam, I don't know if you would like to open it up or if you have any other further questions, but I'm happy to briefly answer anything before people get tired of hearing me.
Couple of things. One is you have a poster that you sent around for the opening that says December 1st. Will you redo that poster, send it out to us so we can get it out to the community with a new date, December 3rd, with a new date of December 10th? That would be helpful. I want you to affirm that there will be automatically locking gates that'll lock at sunset and unlock at sunrise. Yes?
Yes, so there will be automatically locking gates. I'm going to have to speak to the project manager about the how they have it set up with the changing of the sun. If it's going to be set to approximate times, or if it's going to be set to something a little bit more scientific.
Okay. And then what I wanted to ask you about was this idea of the rangers monitoring the gates being locked, being unlocked. And I understand they're unlocked all the time from the inside out, right?
So from the inside of the park, there's a push bar that if you're in the park after it is closed, you will be able to exit the park. It's a beautiful park, but we're not trying to lock people inside of it until morning.
Was one of the questions was, would it always open out? And I believe the answer is yes.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
So Councilmember Bonin's motion has something requesting rangers be available 7 days a week to monitor the park. That's in the motion. I assume that motion will pass. Is there any plan in place, funding in place to get those rangers to be out here in the Palisades 7 days a week?
So the motion doesn't include moving of money to specifically designate or hire a ranger for this park. I will leave it up to Chief Lazzarelli, talking about staff permitting. That being said, I'm not aware of Palisades Recreation Center or this park being a crime hotspot. So I don't, most of their rangers I know are in much larger parks like Griffith Park. I believe that's where they dedicate it. So I don't know if he's on the call yet. I don't want to speak for him and his team though.
Okay. Well, as soon as we're done with you, we're going to check and see who is on the call. I do see Brian, so we'll probably go to him next. I believe Robert Brenostro is on the phone. He's the Senior Facilities Maintenance Manager, I think. So it'll be lovely to meet him too. But let us move on. Anybody have any questions for Noah?
I do. So Noah, look, I think we all want to be productive and positive with this call, but we talk about a 4-foot fence, just a thought. A 4-foot fence, what's even the purpose of locking anything? You just jump over a 4-foot fence. So I realize that was done quite a while ago, but it seems kind of silly to have.
So Blake, my apologies to interrupt, but I may have misspoken or miscategorized it. The fence that abuts private properties is a 4-foot fence to delineate the city's private property line. Entrance, so the fences that are actually border fences between the street and the entrance to the park, that is a 6-foot perimeter fence that you would normally see at a standard park.
Okay.
That's a little bit more difficult for a tall person to just
hop
over, but
that didn't seem to make sense. It's when I think about it logically, and I'm just curious your thoughts. If it's a large park, so somebody comes into the park, and obviously the gates close at 6:30. We know they can get out, but what's a bit concerning, I think, for many people is that there could be people who have lingered. They could linger late. They could come out late, and obviously we don't have the funding for anybody to go through and I guess clear out the park. And I'm just wondering what the thought of managing it. And just the last point I'll make is you did say we don't have a lot of crime, but I do want to make you aware at our view sites and public areas, which have become incredibly more populated post-pandemic and have actually been put on websites as view sites and places to basically loiter, we are getting more crime. We're getting a lot more alcohol drinking and stuff. So, I guess what I know that I'm hearing from all of the people in the Pacific Palisades, that the concern is that we do bring a different element. And I guess what I think is nerve-wracking, Noah, for us is that this lovely park was built, but with no preparation for security. And, we don't want Palisades to get more crime.
Yeah, so just to be clear, parks inherently, creating a park does not create crime. I'll let my colleagues from LAPD talk about that more, but I hope that that's clear. New parks, regardless of if they're in the Palisades or Westchester or West LA, other parts of our district, when they are created, part of their creation doesn't include assigning a LAPD officer or a park ranger to them, or changing patrol routes. Parks that are in our district that have normal operating hours that are from 5 a.m. To 10:30 p.m. Don't inherently, because of them being parks, attract a criminal element in other areas outside of Pacific Palisades. So I understand the fear that having a new place could be like that. I think Dave Card, who was on the Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee, has said this best, that the park is not sports fields and tables and for picnic. You can set up a picnic area and something little over there, but it is a passive recreation park where there will be people walking in it and walking out of it. At night, there are not lights installed in it. It'll be pretty obvious and clear because it's a canyon, how things echo, if somebody is in it after park closures. And the more people that are walking through it, enjoying this park, the safer that it is. The more eyes that are on there, the more likely it is to spot something.
Okay, so I want to say, Tracy Park is on the call, by the way, and so is David Card. And Chris, I see your question, so I'm going to ask you to ask your question. But Noah, I want to echo what Blake is saying. People in the community are pointing out that it's possible to get in during the day, but there's nothing compelling people to get out. And so what happens overnight without any monitoring is going to be something the community is going to be watching intently, and hopefully along with LAPD and FD and the Rangers. It is a concern, and it's not just a concern on the part of people who live near Potrero. I think it's what everybody's talking about. So that is the
I appreciate that. And
okay.
Yeah, I completely appreciate that. And I think that it is the watch and see. I don't want to ask LAPD or the Rangers to dedicate, time, patrolling a park, trying to prevent crime that doesn't yet exist there. I'd also note that relative to other parks, not just in our district, but across the entire city, they don't have perimeter fences. This is actually unique in this level of security that it does have, which was part of the design of the park from the get-go.
Okay, Chris.
Thank you. I appreciate the question.
Okay, Chris.
Okay, really quickly, thank you, Noah, for assuring us about the signage. I really appreciate that. That's super important. I appreciate your comments about the crime issue. I appreciate Blake Merkin's comments and what Mariam followed up with. But I want to emphasize for everyone, this is a document that Mariam kindly provided to everyone who's speaking tonight, and that was prepared by me. And it's a list which includes links to all kinds of fires that have happened in Palisades, many of them in the bluff areas near the mouth of Potrero Canyon, and even in bluff areas right below Friend Street. So the concern is not simply criminal element per se, it's homelessness, camping, smoking, fireworks, and fires that might happen. And that's a big concern, and that's one of the reasons why we feel security is necessary. I just want to make that point. Thank you.
Well, thank you for making the point, Chris. It's well taken, and I appreciate all the work that you've done on this park as well. For those of whom that don't know, Chris, I was actually going to be dropping a link to the council members' council file to change the sunrise to sunset hours. Chris was actually able to find it before me the day that it was posted. So if she could there's a screen sharing thing going on for whoever is controlling this. Pause just real briefly, because I don't know if I can compete with the Apple Store.
That's Mariam.
We can hear you, and I will stop share. I wanted to share.
Okay.
I wanted to share Chris's list of fires, but okay, sorry.
Okay. Yeah, and I believe that Deputy Chief Everett, who's on the call, can certainly speak better to this. But part of the design of the park, the permits that the city had to get from the county fire department are for, I can't remember the exact name, but it's essentially a wildfire mitigation zone. So for those of whom that live directly in the canyon, you'll notice that the only trees, like eucalyptus trees that used to exist there, eucalyptus trees no longer exist inside of the canyon. There's only a certain amount of planting that we can do in the canyon, and there's actually about a 200-foot setback from the city's property line towards the canyon, where there are certain plants that are, whatever the fire department calls, those candlestick kind of plants that we couldn't plant within that zone. So that's the defensible space that the city and county fire department asked for, which is there. And also, like I noted earlier, about there not being lights in the park. I think it is already a very, there's not fire pits set up. There's not large brush areas where people are going to be hiding in. It's not the most habitable, it is not a habitable and nice place for people to camp. And if somebody were to start a camping or warming fire, there aren't lights, it would glow in the canyon instantly. So God forbid, but things are set up in place to avoid the worst possibilities. But thank you for the question, Chris.
Okay, thank you. And Doug Fuchs, do you still have a question?
Hi, this is Caroline Whitcoff. I have a question about the bathrooms. Are those going to be locked at night?
That's an excellent question, Caroline. I'll be honest, I don't want to tell you something that I'm not 100% sure on. That's a question that I'll have to ask either Rec and Park staff or the Bureau of Engineering.
Okay, I have it saved for a park question.
Okay, yeah, my apologies. I don't have the answer to that.
Okay,
Noah, are you
I have the
aware
answer to that.
that the
Noah.
water
Okay.
wasn't just in the river, but it was on the actual pathway? That's where the standing water was. Are you aware of that? And are you aware that the city has built the fence on my property and other people's property? And some people might not be aware of it because they didn't do a survey like some of us did. But there have been issues like this. How do we get those corrected?
So, Francesca, my apologies. Just before jumping into that, I believe that Jasmine, the park director from Palisades Recreation Center, has an answer about the bathrooms to the previous question.
Okay,
I
was
didn't
trying
want to drop that
get
one.
a question in for your original comments.
Okay,
Okay,
so
I understand. I just wanted to go back to the question that was originally asked that I didn't have an answer to, because I do think I mentioned the fences earlier, but I'm happy to mention it again after Jasmine briefly talks about the bathrooms. Thank you, Jasmine, for being on as well.
So Jasmine Dolachai, everyone, she is the Senior Park Director for the Palisades Recreation Center, which will be tasked with overseeing the park. Jasmine, go ahead.
Thank you so much, Miriam, for putting this meeting together. Thank you, Noah, for all the information. Yes, so the bathrooms will be self-locking, just like the gates will. They'll be on a timer as well. They will be
Great. Thank you so much.
self-locking, and they'll reopen in the morning as well.
And I suppose it goes without saying that you'll make sure there's no one in that bathroom when it locks?
So it locks again you push it out. So if you're locked in there, you'll push it out.
Okay, then you can't get back.
So there's a safety mechanism.
All right.
Jasmine, can I ask you an operational question about the park? I'm not quite sure.
But Blake, my
understand.
apologies, but before I apologize to interrupt. I just want to make sure that
Sure.
we don't get in the habit of me interrupting too many people. I do want to go back to Francesca's question real
Sure.
quickly.
It's
for
Francesca, please.
Francesca, thank
I'm
you.
sorry.
Thank you.
Yeah, so as I had mentioned earlier, the city's Bureau of Engineering and city attorneys, they did conduct surveys to determine what was city property and what was private property. In certain cases, they did issue notices to people that they had to correct the encroachments into the city's property. I think that this was
No, I'm
nearly a
talking
decade
about the city encroached on my property and I
You're
had
talking
to
about a
call
city-
them out.
Okay, so if you would like to follow up with me individually about your individual property with the city encroaching on the fence, I'm more than happy
Well,
to follow
I
up with
just want
that.
to
but-
make, I just want to make the neighborhood aware that it's possible it happened to them too.
Okay,
Yeah.
well, we appreciate that, Francesca. We really do, but anything, anything that isn't a broader community impact is maybe personal or to neighbors.
Well, I think everybody on the rim it impacts, but what about the water?
So I encourage you all to reach out to Noah because he says he's not actually leaving or going anywhere and he will be responsive to questions. Noah, have you answered the water? There is a riparian way. That was what was always told to us.
But it
Standing
was on
water-
the path. It wasn't in the riparian way.
Okay.
The water
I know,
that
yeah.
recently was down there,
Mhm.
I could see from my backyard. It wasn't, and then they were brooming it away. So I'm
Okay, so
thinking
Noah, has there
there's
been a
design
resolution for
flaw.
that standing water?
I think we can
I'll-
assume that the water element will probably get repaired as this opens up. So
Yeah, who do we talk to about it? Who do we report it to? Exactly.
So here comes my cat with her statement as well. Yes, my cat was coming to let me know that the Bureau of Engineering has repaired that and is aware of it. I'll double check to make sure that it has been repaired and that it's no longer leaking, in addition to the question earlier about, Jasmine answered the questions about the bathrooms, but I will double check about, I know what you're talking about, the irrigation line that was directly adjacent to the pathway. I believe it's been fixed, but I will follow up with the Bureau of
So
Engineering.
I also want to say that once the
You're
park
working
opens,
too.
there's also the Park Advisory Board. If there's standing water, Francesca, we'll hear about it. And we'll
Okay, according to your site, there's no one on the advisory board anymore. Who is part of the advisory board?
Oh, well, that's a conversation for another day. You can email me and I'll give you the list of the people who are on the advisory board. There are about
It
13
says it's
people on the
closed down. Your site says it's closed
I'm
down.
sorry, we do have to move on, but it isn't closed down. The Park Advisory Board meets quarterly.
Okay,
and
you need,
have
well,
14
you
members.
need to update your site then.
The city updates the site. I'll certainly let them know. Okay, let's see who else is on the call because we are going to want to hear from everybody. So Brian Esprin, you're on the call, right? Yes. Sonia Young Jimenez. Sonia, are you still here?
I'm here, Miriam.
Yes. Hi, Sonia. I think we might go to you next. Let me just introduce everyone who's on the call so we know how many people we're hearing from and everyone can pace themselves as they comment or question. We have Jasmine on the call. Jasmine, Senior Park Director, you all just met her. Chief Joseph Everett from LAPD. Chief Everett, are you still on? I saw you coming in.
Yes, I'm on LAFD.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go to LAFD after we hear from Sonia. Sergeant Scott Alford, I see that you're on. Tamara Galatzman, are you still on?
I am.
Hi, Tamar. Thank you for joining us. All right, everyone. So she's the supervisor at the neighborhood prosecutors. I think we'll hear from her after we hear from FD, and then we'll go from there. And then I think I'd really like to hear from Robert Buenostro. So Sonia, you have the floor. Tell us what you know and answer any of the questions that we sent to you last night that are within your purview. Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. And thank you, everybody, for joining the call today. I know we're all anticipating to open and also concerned a little bit. I know operationally, we've been talking about who's going to be overseeing the park. So Jasmine, the director at Palisades, will be pretty much the point person. Like Noah said earlier, it is a passive park, so we're not issuing any permits in the park. It's just for people to walk through and enjoy as a trail. So there will be no like special events or permits in the park, like picnics or birthday parties or stuff like that. So just so you're aware. Right now we're deciding to include any concerns to go to the Pacific Palisades Park Advisory Board. If we do notice that, there's a lot of concern and maybe it needs its own board, then we can address that in the future. But right now that it's just opening, we're going to be having to go to the Pacific Palisades Park Advisory Board, and there'll be an agendized item so we can have updates and people can address like the concerns that they have when we open the park. I'm trying to think of what other question. I think he answered a lot of them. Anything else, Miriam, you thinking?
Well, I do want to say anybody who wants to get in touch with the PAB, it's palisadespab@gmail.com. Palisadespab@gmail.com. Sonia, I'm going to run through these questions and see which ones of them I think you can answer.
Sure.
So Jasmine is going to be tasked with, or park staff is going to be tasked with overseeing the park. Does that mean that there'll be staff to check the gates maybe when they go or at sunset, or is that totally left to the automatic mechanism system?
Well, we haven't opened yet, so we have to talk to Jasmine about that, how it's going to work. I don't think they'll be like going through the canyon. We're very short staffed, so like but I think she could check the gates and just make sure that they're closed.
Okay. There was a question about, so the Pacific Palisades Community Council had suggested that the Department of Recreation and Parks confer with LAPD, SLO, ESPN, or whoever, to see where best to post signs. I can ask Brian Espin if that's been done, but do you know if that's been done, if there's been a determination made as to where those signs, there was LAMC code signs are going to go?
I know they did determine with our planning section. I don't know if they confer with LAPD though. So okay. I can talk to our planning section because they're the ones that kind of determine where the signs go. I know we do know where the main sign's going to go that says like a lot of the codes, but there should be some at both ends. So right now they're being developed and I know Noah has been helping with that a lot. But we can make sure that LAFD is involved in that process. Okay. Especially
Brian, when we talk to you, we'll ask you if you've been in touch with them, but Sonia, please do put them in touch with Brian so he has some insight as to where they might go. And, maybe that'll be a moving target as everyone has said. We'll see how things progress, but for now, it'd be nice to have them talk to LAPD.
Can I ask a question about the signs, please?
Sure.
So my name is Marco. I live across the street from the Friend Street entrance. So around the corner is the Bluffs, and that's a park, if I'm correct, and somebody can correct me, and it says sunset to sunrise, same thing, park is closed. And people hang out there all the time and no one does anything about moving them. So what makes you think that a sign is going to do that? A sign is just a sign. It's really making you guys do something to cover yourselves. And I'm not trying to be rude, but there's signs all over the Bluffs that you can't be there, and people are drinking, smoking, music, fireworks. Why wouldn't they go right into the park and just have a new place to stay? How can you have a place with no security? It makes no sense whatsoever.
Who
And
is
then when
leaving
when
tasks
you're
to
saying,
enforce
well,
it?
I'm not done yet.
Yeah.
And when Noah says that we have to wait till something happens, there's right around the corner, it's already happening. So it shows you that that is no reason that they're gonna do it. Why would they stop now? You have signs all over that area and nobody's policing that. So why would the park be different? And is the park separate from that? So maybe I'm wrong, but.
So it's absolutely, this is the genre of question that's on everyone's mind. I'm gonna wait for LAPD to answer that one. I doubt Sonia can. But yes, signs in and of themselves will not be enforcement. Signs should be a deterrence. Enforcement will be with LAPD, and we'll have them speak about that when I bring them on. So Sonia, I'm going down the list for you. The fire issue, we'll go to LAFD for that. Would it be feasible to install security cameras at strategic locations in the park and have staff monitor them? Is that something that's come up? Cameras versus actual eyeballs?
It hasn't come up. I know cameras are very expensive, so I don't know where the funding would come for that, and that hasn't come up in the discussion thus far. I know it's been a long going conversation, but before I became, in this position, so I can talk to our planning section.
Okay, so the park board's going to meet in January. Sonia, I wonder if you can have a conversation about cameras and maybe bring whatever you learned to the park board, and then, we'll have to go back to the community about, cameras and security, obviously, but if you could find out if there's a way to put up some cameras, that'd be great. Alan, was that you? Yeah, no, who?
That was Noah.
If I can just chime in real quickly about the cameras, because I do think that I think it's a fine idea. There's nothing inherently wrong with it. I do know, we've got a city attorney on the call that might have a thing to do with a city installing cameras on there. The only place that I can think of in our entire district that has cameras, and Sonia, correct me if I'm wrong, is Venice Beach, which is the largest park in our district. I think one of the largest parks in the entire city, which has much more visitors than anticipated at this park. And I believe when we installed those cameras, it was almost $200,000. Is that correct?
I think a little more, yeah. I want to install a couple more cameras at Venice, and it's over $100,000. So it is very.
Yeah. So
the
I'm just
money is something I think the community is going to have to a conversation with the new council member about. But yes, I mean,
exactly.
Sometimes we are going to need an allocation of money. Yeah.
Yeah,
okay.
I just wanted to frame it that way because there are, as I've heard from other folks in the Palisades, from Jasmine, playgrounds, ADA, restrooms, the entire rec center. So I just wanted to frame it in order of needs.
Okay, but I also want to point out that this is now a regional park, something we haven't had in the Palisades ever. We've always had smaller parks. This is a regional park. So a little investment in this park might be necessary. Sorry, you guys, I want to get through all the questions, and I know there are other questions, but we'll get to them. Measures that might be feasible to ensure public safety. I believe, Sonia, some of the RIM residents spoke to you, and the idea that percolated was private security that's affirmed by the city, right? Vendors that are approved by the city. Is that the option?
Yeah, I talked to Chief Lazzarelli, who's on the call, I believe, to discuss that. So, hiring security is an option. We do have contracted security who is insured through the city. I know a lot of people said that Palisades Patrol is around, but that's a private company that isn't insured through the city. So liability wise, that wouldn't be a good idea. But there is different companies. I know Chief might talk about that when he is able to talk about that a little bit more.
Okay. So just so everyone knows, some community members did have that conversation with Sonia and did get that feedback. Plan for maintenance. Sonia, would you like to introduce us to Robert Buenostro? What is the plan for park maintenance, including landscaping, trash collection? Where will the trash cans be placed? Where will the collection go? How often will trash cans be emptied? And is there sufficient funds for ongoing maintenance?
Yeah, so Robert Bernostro is our new principal. I believe he's on recreation supervisor and oversees the west side as well as Venice and Palisades. So Robert's on. He also oversees all the staff there. So if Robert wants to address any of those. And this is all, yeah, go on. I'm gonna say we're all figuring it out too, you guys. So we're it's a new park for all of us and we're all in the new position. So take it over, Robert. Thank you.
Hi, good evening, everyone. Yes, I'm Robert Bondrostro. I'm the Principal Maintenance Supervisor for the West Region. And yeah, there will be a there is a maintenance plan. The department currently is contracting out the maintenance to a private contractor that's going to maintain it. I'm not sure what the terms are. I believe it might be anywhere between 1 to 5 years, which will include, trash litter pickup, weed abatement, irrigation work. And the restrooms, though, however, will be maintained by our park staff. And in addition, the contractor will be going there in the morning to do their typical servicing 7 days a week. But, in addition to us cleaning the restrooms, our staff, we're also going to be patrolling through there just in case, as the day goes by, there may be things that come up, a trash can that might be overflowing or actually, that's maybe been knocked over or what have you. We're still going to be monitoring regardless. And if there's anything that comes up that needs maintenance, instant maintenance, cleaning or anything, we will address on the spot.
Okay, so that's good to
Could I
know.
ask Robert just one question?
Yes, Blake, can you hang on one second? Because Chris had her hand up first. We
Oh,
tend
sure.
to do this.
Yeah, okay, thanks, Mariam. So Mr. Buenrostro, thank you so much for being here. Is there any way that you can provide, say, to Mariam or, the PPCC, a copy of whatever is the contract with the private contractor so we can see what's the parameters of his or her work? And also, where will the trash cans be? A real down and dirty question. Where will those trash cans be and how often will they be emptied? Thank you.
Yes, I will reach out to Bureau of Engineering because they're the ones that are contracting out the landscape contractor, the maintenance contractor for that, regarding the maintenance. But as far as the trash cans themselves, we're going to place them in strategic areas, near the restroom building, any areas where there's park benches, we'll have them nearby as well. And then a lot of it's going to be, we're going to play some of it by ear as well, just to see like where more people congregate, which are the busier areas where we can access the cans. If we feel we need additional cans, we'll place additional cans. If it's too many cans, then obviously we'll play it by ear and we'll reduce them. But it's going to be a daily thing, the trash maintenance pickup and everything.
All right, thank you. But real quick, will they be at each of the entrance points, including the Front Street entrance point? Okay,
absolutely.
Robert, what I was going to suggest.
One second, Blake, 1 second. No, I do see your hand up. Robert, question, where will it go? Will it go to the Pali Rec Center trash yard or will it be hauled off by your contractor? Where will the trash?
The contractor will haul out the trash and dump at their own site.
Okay.
Anything that we collect while we're there will be dropped off there at Palisades.
Okay, but so the lion's share is going to go from the contractor is what I'm thinking. All right.
Correct.
Just a quick point of clarification I think might be for Sonia and Robert is that I think that there's a distinction in the maintenance contract for that. I believe what Robert you're talking about is the landscape maintenance team, that they're going to be doing things like irrigation, plumbing, riparian basin, those things that have been newly constructed. And Robert, the normal Rec and Parks maintenance team are going to be handling things that are restrooms and trash. Is that correct?
Well, so in speaking with Kristen, she actually emailed me about 2 weeks ago asking as far as our maintenance trash pickup, what times we do that, because she was going to speak to the contractor about that, about doing it 7 days a week. Typically we like to have our trash picked up, any litter, things like that, restrooms clean between 7 and 9 a.m. By that time that all that should be done. So that's what we're asking them to do as well.
Oh, okay. Okay. Good to know. Thank you. I just wanted to clarify that. Appreciate it.
So that was actually kind of important. Noah, you're talking about a landscape maintenance contract. Robert, you're talking about an actual maintenance contract. Yes, both are in place?
It's just gonna be both.
Okay, thank you. Mr. Merkin,
I was just gonna suggest, you've got on both of those two staffs, some very fine people, and I would just ask that possibly while they're being trained, that they could be, it could be communicated that if they see anything out of order, to be our communication. They're going to be the eyes and ears a lot of that canyon for the first 6 months. And it would be great if, you just let the team know if they see something wrong, text you or whomever, because we don't have anybody else in there.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. And I can share my email address if anyone wants, my email, to shoot me an email. I'm pretty responsive. I carry this phone that I'm on right now. This is like, I carry this with me all the time. So throughout the day, I'm constantly checking it if I'm not in my office. And I'm pretty quick at replying. So please don't hesitate to reach out, and we'll address anything right away. Obviously, if you see any of our park staff, same thing, let them know and they'll relay the message to us, and we'll make sure we address things right away.
okay, so couple of questions still for you guys, wrap before I let you go. Well, here's a simple one. Will there be dog poop bags at the trash cans in the park?
So typically, how this works with how this has been working with maintenance, we can put up the actual wastebasket stations, but as far as stocking them, we no longer do that. We no longer stock them just because of pretty much every park in the city, we have the same issue where we stock them and the next day they're gone. Everybody, they take the whole roll, so it's expensive.
You can install the dispenser and the community would have to fill it with the little trash bags?
Correct. Yeah, that's pretty much what's happening everywhere.
Okay, and then wrap staff goes home at what time?
Maintenance staff goes home at 2:30 p.m.
No, but the staff at the park, Jasmine, staff at the park goes home at what time?
Monday through Friday, they're going home at 9:30, but the park closes at 9.
Okay.
And Saturday and Sunday, they're going home around 7.
Okay, so I want to make this suggestion. If people see something after 9 o'clock, they're going to want to call or email someone. So I don't know if you have a number or an email that you want to offer us, but I will tell you that when we set up the task force on homelessness, 7 years ago, when we set up the task force on homelessness, we created a dedicated email that somebody would monitor so that at 2 o'clock in the morning or midnight or whenever, there would be a place to call or a place to email. So I don't know if you're prepared to give an email or a phone call right now on this call or later to the community and we can put the word out, but just a thought, please give us a place to contact when it's after hours.
Are you speaking to me, Miriam?
All of you, Sonia, Robert, generally wrap.
So I don't want to speak for wrap on this, but I did notice that question, that if there's anything happening during the operational hours of the park, so both Potrero and Palisades Recreation Center, Jasmine, park staff, the normal parks contact number, Jasmine's email address that's public that she gives out to people, the office phone number, everybody should feel free to call that. When you're talking about things that are what I believe the question is entailing, that is an emergency in nature, which is trespassing in a park after hours, which are people being in the park loitering after hours when they shouldn't be, things like that are an emergency or a crime in progress. Again, those are calls that need to be going to our partners that are in public safety at either LA Police Department or LA Fire Department. So Rec and Park staff wouldn't be the appropriate point of contact. So I do appreciate them. Like I said, if it's a fire, that's LA Fire Department. If it's LAPD, or if it's a crime in progress, it's LAPD, which can all be reached through 911 or the non-emergency line for LAPD. I believe LAPD online.
Chief Losarelli, are you on the call? Yes. If somebody has the chief's number, can you text him, let him know if he wants to chime in at this point? That would be great.
May I ask a question?
I'll ask him. I know he's going to be on, so let me check.
Okay, his name is he's connected, he just might not be paying attention. And Chief Everett, we're going to come to you next. Francesca?
Yes, can you tell us about the landscaping maintenance now that there's a giant lawn down there? Are they going to be mowing that on a regular basis? How is that going to work?
Robert, I think that question was,
Yes, that's gonna be on a mowing schedule, on a, once a week, it'll be mowed.
And it was originally to be a riparian habitat. Is that grass considered riparian?
Well, where the sod was laid down, that's just normal turf, basically. So it's not, yeah.
It's not a riparian habitat. Got it.
okay. Chief Losarelli? No, all right. LAFD is kind enough to be on the call. Chief Everett?
Hi, rather good evening, everybody, and thanks for having me on the call. Can everybody nod if you can hear me okay?
We can hear
Great, great. So I looked at probably the question that's most relative to what I do was just the simple fire safety in the area. And I'll get to that, but let me just talk a little bit about what's been going on since I have clearly concerned citizens on the call. I'll take this opportunity to tell you about some of the things going on with the fire department that relates directly to you. So this year, we did not have a very significant fire season, and I'm going to knock on wood right here and say that we're pretty darn close to fire season being over. What it takes for us to officially end fire season, and there's one of my lovely engines going on a call right now. What it takes to officially end fire season by the weather experts is 2 inches of rain. And I know that we're well under that, but I do believe that this rain coming this weekend is somewhat significant. I know in the Sierras, they're talking about 2 to 4 feet of snow, and I'm going skiing. But so I think we're pretty close to that. We just experienced over the Thanksgiving day, a pretty significant high hazard day, and I was concerned. And some of you have probably heard me speak on these calls before, and a little bit about me is I live over in Malibu Canyon. And what I always tell people in the Palisades, one of my favorite things to tell people is the anxiety that you have regarding wildfires, I share with you, because the fires that are going to affect you are going to affect my house and my family. So when I respond to a fire, when I respond to, thanks, Brian, LAPD over there. When I respond to a fire, I have a vested interest. I have, I not only love the Palisades, but I have a vested interest in my couple canyons over. And then my father retired out of Fire Station 69, and my grandfather back in 1937 started his career at Fire Station 69. I didn't have enough time to be a captain at Fire 69, so I had to become a chief officer. Now I'm in charge of all of them. Those members that work there, I say this in all certainty, and I've actually probably said it recently today, is that is our varsity team when it comes to firefighters. The men and women that work there put on a lot of years on the fire service and have a wealth of experience. That became evidently true. It's probably been a couple of weeks now. There was a fire just right below the Huntington Highlands there, below Corona Del Mar. And the local knowledge and the institutional knowledge and the geographical knowledge that the members of Fire Station 69 had to be able to get down to the bottom of the fire, look at its magnitude at the same time, and start instilling hose lines at the same time, splitting their resources and going up to the top on Corona Del Mar and saving those homes is an example of what you can expect from the members there, and also at Fire Station 23. Since I've been here as a chief officer for the last, say, close to 4 years, probably burned brush in the Palisades area alone, between 1,100 and 1,500 acres. Obviously, one of the bigger ones was up in the Temescal Canyon Park, 1,100 acres. And then probably in my eyes, one of the most significant fires that I've had here was 40 acres that burned up towards Lockman Lane off of Palisades Drive. And the reason why I tell you that is because I just kind of want to show you just the seriousness and the well-trained firefighters that come to respond to those incidents. I want to leave you rest assured that we're ready for you. And I also want to leave you rest assured that, and you can quote me if you want, but I really believe that we're kind of out of it, at least for this year, we're out of it. In terms of fires, when we do have an increased hazard day, we'll increase our patrols of some of our smaller apparatus if I have the staffing. But on top of that, we have a team of volunteers called CERT volunteers, and they will increase their patrol. And I can certainly have them include the park in that patrol too on high hazard days. Those days, like we call them red flag days, and that's when we have parking restrictions, and then we'll, like I said, we'll increase our patrols in certain areas. In terms of the park alone, it's in terms of fire safety, it's good. They had native vegetation in there prior, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, it's been some years since it's been graded. And you can compare that area to some of the other areas along the bluffs that have had fires, and you're not going to see wildland fires in that area just because of the eradication of the brush. So that's a positive. And what we concern ourselves with, you know, as it relates to that is three things, and it's weather, topography, and fuel. So if you take the fuel out, then, which is what we did there, or not we, but has been done there, then it's a benefit to the people that live up and around there. So you kind of take a deep breath on there. But we'll obviously have to always concern ourselves with weather. And then the reason I bring up topography is the third ingredient is I'm not going to lie to you. I mean, the areas that sit on top of the bluffs in the Palisades area are truly in a draw. They're truly going to be in the path of a fire if it starts from the bottom and burns up. And that's where we where that local knowledge, where local firehouses, we'll get up there and get on those streets and start deploying our engines and our manpower to protect homes simultaneously while we anchor the fire from below. Let's see. So I think that somewhat answers the question about fire safety. In terms of, I will put a request in when those days happen to increase the patrols. In terms of cameras, we don't monitor cameras in that area, but we do have a number of cameras, and I tell you this just to reduce anxiety for wildfires. I do have a number of cameras that we share with other entities that are on the ridge tops, like along Mulholland, Dirt Mulholland, that look down into almost every single canyon in the Palisades. And so you're not concerned about your privacy or anything. When I look at those cameras, like houses are actually dotted out, but they are live cameras, and it's not uncommon for me to get a report of something nearby, and I might start looking on those cameras on my iPad on the way down there. And our ability and our ability to enhance our situational awareness through technologies in my time on the fire department is like tenfold. We have drones that we can fly over that we only will put up during a reported wildfire. And then we have some brand new helicopters afforded to us. And then we have some contracts with some fixed wing airplanes that we're starting to use from CAL FIRE. And so we're really in good shape when it comes to wildfire preparedness. And then the last thing is our organizational relationships with our neighbors over at the county fire department. They get here. The county fire department actually will be in the Palisades quicker than most of the people on the first alarm assignment from the city. So you get 23s, 69s. I'll be coming down the hill pretty quickly, but you'll see 70s over on Carbon Canyon and PCH, and you'll see the camp crews coming off the hill up by Payuma. And so I have a working relationship with them, and we constantly talk, and we have plans to mitigate and any type of emergency we might have. So that's it in a nutshell, and I hope I've answered the questions, but beyond that, I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Okay. Well, we very much appreciate it. I know Sharon Kilbride's on the call. I'm going to have her ask the question she asked late today that didn't make it onto the list. But let me just say that everything that you tell us is reassuring and wonderful, and we appreciate it. A lot of it is reactive, right? It's what you would do after you know that there's a spark. Most of the questions people have are, how can we monitor to make sure that this park doesn't have people in it in the dark, lighting a fire or whatever the case may be. You mentioned drones. The PPCC happens to have a safety advisor who's talked about drones a lot. Is that feasible? I mean, is it possible for Station 69 to float drones over the park and see if there are people in there for hours?
When we started our drone program, which is, and I don't know all the legal logistics on it, but when we started our drone program, it was caught up in a lot of legal conflicts, for lack of better terminology. So I don't have an affirmative answer on that, but it's not as easy as it seems. However, if there is, an emergency, we do have approval legally and approval from the FAA to be able to launch our drones.
Okay. Okay, Sharon Kilbride, you sent me a series of great questions. They didn't make it onto the list, but fire them off.
A little late, sorry. So Chief Everett, here's a question for you. Back in 2015, we had several fires and we created the homeless task force because of the issues of all the homeless living in our hillsides. So now with the new park, during the construction, we have, oops, okay, somebody's doing something here. We have the perimeters, which are supposedly fenced off. Now, I haven't been up there recently, but that means that the hillsides are now accessible, for someone that wants to wander off into the lower Via Bluffs. We spent like 2 years cleaning up those abandoned camps. We got a lot of those people housed, but my problem is that the restricted entry signage that we worked with Inspector Novella back then. We put in about 50 signs in all the hotspot areas. A lot of those were destroyed with the trucks and all the movement up there with the park, with the construction. So now we're missing quite a few signs. And the other question would be, can we get some more of the restricted entry signs, which is LAMC 57.4908-8.1, along those perimeters, so we make sure that they aren't repopulated, and we get more camps, and that's more work for LAPD to go up there and canvass those areas readily. And a lot of the roads up there have actually fallen down in the recent rain. So a lot of the roads just drop off, but we do need probably about maybe 20 signs up there. So I don't know if there's someone in your department now that's responsible that we could work with to implement some more signs that have been destroyed during the construction process.
Yeah, that's a great point. And the person responsible for brush inspections, that was an inspector/firefighter. I do know him personally, so I'll reach out to him. He also lives close by and is very knowledgeable with the area. So I will reach out to them and make a point that the old signs were destroyed in the act of construction, and we're going to need some new signage as it relates to fire safety and ordinances.
Yeah, because we did a lot of work cleaning up that area, and at present day, those bluffs are clear. But with the opening of the park, there's going to be people that are going to venture over into those restricted areas. And without those signs posted, we're just opening up, another tinderbox. So we don't want that to happen. So if we could get ahead of the game, that would be wonderful. So
you also bring up a good point. The community action with the task force, I think, was a success. I was a part of that. And I know Brian from LAPD was a part of that. And that was an opportunity for the allied agencies to come together with some of the community members like yourself and really have a positive impact on fire safety. So I really encourage those types of actions.
Yeah, because once a camp, always a camp. So that's why we have to, when we see it, we're up there, we get it cleared out, we offer the people services and, try to help them. But it makes me nervous, all that work that we've done without any signage in those areas. We're just opening ourselves up. The community dangers in itself is detrimental to that whole area. So
agreed, and I've made a note of it.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you both. Thank you both. David Card, your hand's up. David Card.
Yeah, yes. With regard to the signage that Sharon was just talking about, Sharon, you're talking about signage outside the boundary of the new park, because once you're in the park, it's okay to be in the park during the daylight hours.
That's
Anybody can go through the park.
I'm
So
talking
the
about,
signage you want is just outside the park, right?
yes, those are the ones that were destroyed. All the ones that were on the trails behind in the Via Olas Bluffs, a lot of them have been knocked down with the trucks that aren't in the park, on the perimeters outside of the park area.
Okay. And the other point I wanted to make to the chief, thank you, Chief, for giving us this information. I know that when the designing was originally done way back when, we consulted with the fire officials, and they wanted a 12-foot wide fire road through the park. And that's been provided with a soil cement surface sufficient to sustain the heavy traffic of fire trucks. Do your folks at 6923 and maybe even the county have a plan to periodically drive through the park just for the experience of it and for planning purposes, as an exercise for fighting potential fires in the park from the bottom of the park?
Yeah, that is another great point. It brings us great access, not only there, but just and kind of get to where we need to go in half the time if we choose to use that. The question would be for me, and to your point, would be testing our heavy apparatus. We call them like our type 1 engines. Those are the ones you see racing down the street. And they're pretty darn heavy. So the engineers are very particular about where we put them. However, that being said, we do have a number of brush patrols in the area that are basically 4-wheel drive trucks. We use those a lot on brush fires. And then you hear us going up in the hills for hikers up on Sullivan and things like that. And those certainly are 4-wheel drive pickups with a hose reel and a small pump on the back that we can certainly use up there. 23s has one in their quarters. But to your point, I'm actually going to put that on my drill calendar and see what the probability and the accessibility is for some of our heavier apparatus up there.
Yeah. All right, good. One follow-up question. At the bottom of the mouth of the canyon where the park ends, at least for now, there is supposed to be a 6-foot tall fence across the whole mouth of the canyon with a big gate for vehicles, but also a small gate for pedestrians. Someday we'll have a trail up to Temescal Canyon for a safe crossing to the beach. Eventually, we're going to have a bridge that goes over for pedestrians over to the beach. But right now, there should be, and I haven't seen it, but I will as soon as the park opens, a 6-foot fence all the way across the mouth of the canyon. So as LAPD Officer Moore told us way back when in 2005 and 6, anybody can scale a fence by going over, under, or through it, but at least it's a deterrent. And so hopefully it will deter people from jumping the fence and running across PCH to get to the beach. But that is our main concern for public safety, is keeping people from jaywalking across PCH. And that is why we need the trail and the bridge. Thank you.
Is the fence up? That 6-foot fence, is it up around the perimeter? Yes. Okay. Thank you, Noah. Okay. Chief Losarelli, are you back?
Mariam, can I ask one point?
Of course.
Thank you to the Chief Everett and also on David Card's last comments. I do have a question about that trail going to Temescal Canyon. Maybe we can bring that up later. It's related to the park, of course, but I don't want to take too much time right now. So okay. Can we not get to that point? It's more for Noah, I think.
Yeah, it's question number 22. So we'll get to it.
Thank you.
The last one. But let's bring LAPD in here. We still can't get Chief Losarelli to either effectively join or unmute, I believe. I hope we do before we're done. Everybody, please stay on the call until we do. But so Brian Espin, you're there with Sergeant Alpert? Yeah?
Correct. Yeah, we're all sitting in the conference room.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you both for joining us. Senior Lead Officer Brian Espin. Brian, tell us what you know, please. I'm sure you've seen the questions. Give us tell us what you can respond to, and then we've got a couple of questions for you.
Sure. So going back to the initial question of have I been in touch with RAP regarding the posting of the signs and where? Yes, I have. They sent me the map and we overlooked it. The signs as of now, they're being placed at the, I guess the beginning or the start of the walkways, the paths. So as somebody's walking in, it's pretty much gonna be the first thing that they see. So I have been in contact with them regarding the signage. As it relates to patrols, basically this is a new park, a new area for us. So it is going to be one of our hot topics, our directed patrol locations for our Palisades patrol car. our beach unit, myself. As this park opens, we're gonna try to be out there as much as we can based on our availability and our resources that we have. So it's not something that we're gonna just ignore. We are gonna try to keep tabs on the park as best we can. Now, when it comes to people being in the park, and I know Marco was referring to about their signs all over the place. The signs are basically, they can be a deterrent. Are they? Most likely not. But it is to inform people that whatever the rules of the LMCs are. And for us as officers, for enforcement purposes, it's a tool that we're able to use. So when it comes to infractions and most misdemeanors, it's to the officer's discretion on enforcement, whether it's going to be just a warning, a verbal warning, an actual citation, or a physical arrest. Only when it comes to the felonies do we actually physically arrest somebody and take somebody into custody. So the signage, the LEMC codes, the rules, the park rules, a lot of it's going to be to the discretion of the officers, or even probably the rangers, I'm sure, of what the totality of what crime it is that they're doing. If it's people in the park after hours, it's for right now, it's going to be a lot of verbal warning. You guys need to leave the park. Park's closed at sunset. And then if it's the same officers, if they see the same people, then we can up the enforcement to a citation or even a physical arrest if it needs be. We are concerned with some of our homeless population trying to occupy that area. They'll access it during the day, and then obviously the gates will lock it in the evening. So we will be trying to go in there during the off hours of the park just to check it out and do patrol. Because that is one of our main concerns, is people setting up shop in there. As Chief Everett and the parks, they did mention that a lot of the brush was eradicated out of there. So I haven't been in there recently, but I'm assuming there's not going to be a lot of areas where they can tuck themselves in and be completely covered with a canopy of trees or brush. So going in there and checking, we'll be able to do that. But then also for the residents along the canyon edges, if you see somebody setting up an encampment, a tent, please let us know. I encourage everyone, I know, and I tell everybody this, our non-emergency line, personally, it sucks. It takes a long time to get a hold of a dispatcher because we are the city, it's just crazy busy. But I encourage everyone just to stay on that line and make that call, because I need that for me when I'm requesting more resources, like for our beach, for example. We have a dedicated beach unit, and that is because I have the documented calls for service that I can refer back to and say, this is the many calls that we've had, this is why we need a dedicated unit out here. So please call that non-emergency line. And I know it's frustrating just being on hold for 20, 30, 40 minutes, depending on how long it is. But for me to request the resources, to the documentation, I need those incident numbers, those calls documented. So if you see anybody in that park after hours, you can call the police, the non-emergency line. It might take 30 minutes, an hour, 2 hours, 4 hours, 5 hours for us to show up. But at least it's documented that we're now seeing a problem if people are in the park after hours. I'm going to have to get in touch with Jasmine at the park and figure out how us as LAPD, how we are going to be able to access to get into the park after hours when those gates are locked. Me personally, I don't feel like jumping in a 6-foot fence with all this gear on. It's not as comfortable, and chasing anybody in there for a simple trespass is probably not going to happen. So we will try to figure out a way that we're going to be able to get in there a little bit easier for the officers as well as myself. Trying to think what else.
While you're thinking, I'm just going to say, Sonia, can you make sure that LAPD has access to those gates, and Noah, you too, in these last remaining couple of weeks? I want to share with you all that over at the Park Advisory Board, we had a conversation with LAPD for a little while about giving them some space up at the park so that they would be able to file their reports and not have to go all the way downtown. And the problem that came up was that parks, recreation and parks, couldn't give LAPD access to the building after hours. And so that kind of killed the deal. I would not want that same complication to happen now. It's far more important than our little, aspirational spot for LAPD. So between Sonia and Noah, can you please make sure that LAPD can unlock those doors?
I'm going to defer that to Sonia, but I think that there's a standard key that they'll have for that. And I think that there's no issues whatsoever in making sure
Okay.
LAPD and LAFD have keys to that. And also Dave Card can correct me if I'm wrong, but I'm actually pretty sure one of the roads is the decomposed granite soil road or soil cement road is specifically built as a fire route that fire engines should be able to safely drive on that route should they need. I see Dave nodding his head, yes.
Yes, I see him nodding too. I just want to, Brian, I'm going to let you continue, but question number 10 was what city officials should be contacted in the event of an issue or problem in the park? Who will be the contact person for the park and what is his or her contact information? Will that contact be available 24/7? So I just want to reiterate what we've learned on this call is from morning until 9 p.m., you call the Palisades Recreation Center office. That would be Jasmine and her staff. Anything thereafter, you would call LAPD 311. You would stay on that call until you register the complaint, right? So that you get it over in your stats. And so after 9 p.m., it's LAPD or LAFD, whatever the situation may be. Before 9 p.m., it's Jasmine. Jasmine, if you don't mind dropping your office phone into the chat, I think that would be really helpful for people. All right. I see your question, Marco. One more thing, just quickly from me. Those signs that we made, the PPTFH, the Pacific Palisades Task Force on Homelessness signs that we made in 2017 and we installed, installing them was not a small deal. We had to work with the council office, with the fire department. There was money involved. Installing was not free, nor was it cheap. And what it was, they're trespassing signs. So what they do is that they deter people from going into a space that we had designated a high fire severity zone. So like Sharon says, those would have to go along the perimeter. On the inside are the wrap signs, right, that have the LAMC codes. Those I assume will also have to be installed. I assume they will be installed firmly. They can't just be moved. So please think about where they'd need to be in order to allow you to enforce the law. Maybe they don't. I'm just saying they're not easy to move. These aren't signs that we just poke into the ground and then we move them and we move them somewhere else. There's cement pouring, they stay. So please let's be assiduous about where we put them. All right, Marco.
Hi, thank you. For LAP, well, I guess to anyone that can answer, what I'm a little concerned about is I just wanted to mention again that I live right across the street from the Friend Street entrance. And for the last 3 years, some of you know that what I do is I've been cleaning up around the bluffs. At least 3-4 times a week, I'm out there cleaning up every morning. I can tell what the crowd was there from the night before based on what I'm picking up, bottles and stuff like that, and trash and stuff like that. What I'm a little concerned about is since there's an entrance there, that people will be leaving the park and then just staying right there and hanging out and almost like taking their day out and go, okay, let's just hang out here now in front of this entrance. So my question would be, and if it's a later answer, maybe instead of a wait and see thing, what are they going to do about hanging out there at that entrance? And what about parking for the people that live on Friend Street, and not only Friend Street, around that area? Is there any talk about that or any concerns about really the entrances is where the hangouts are going to be?
So Mark, just sorry, Marco. If you start noticing a pattern where people are constantly hanging out at the entrance, specific days, hours, times, let me know that, because my part of my job is trying to handle the long-term stuff. When it's somebody just trespassing or a crime in progress, the patrol guys come out and handle it. They're the ones out in the field. I'm in and out of the office. Sometimes I'm here, sometimes I'm out driving around. But definitely let me know. I'm going to put my email in the chat in a second so everybody can reach out to me. But definitely let me know when there's a pattern that you see. And then that's something that I can address, whether it's reaching out to my patrol officers, the beach unit, and giving what we call directed patrol, be here at this certain time of day, these days, because this is the pattern we're trying to break. So that's for if you see a nuisance side of it. Obviously, if it's a crime, you call the non-emergency line or 911. But if it's just the nuisance part of it, reach out to me, and then I handle the long-term stuff. My biggest concern, I'm glad you brought this up, but my biggest concern is not so much the homeless in there, because a lot of, like I said, a lot of the shrubs and the canopies for them to hide out and set up encampments, that's kind of been removed. My biggest concern is all the high school kids right now in the park, the high school kids hanging out at the bottom lower pit down by the closer to the little area by the tennis courts. I think, honestly, I think that's going to be the bigger concern for all the residents along the bluffs is the kids, obviously the younger guys being able to jump the fence, being in there after hours at night. So the group of kids, I think, is going to be something that is going to be the bigger problem right now. That I'm going to look at and see how the first couple weeks, months go, and see if we're even having an issue. But I think that for me is going to be the biggest concern right now in that park. So. And I'm sure Jasmine can attest to that because her and I have been talking a lot about the problems in the park with all the high school kids.
And can anyone answer the question about the parking? Does anybody know anything about that yet, or is it too soon?
If there's well, it's too soon because we don't know what's going to happen. But if there's a parking issue, then obviously you're going to contact Department of Transportation, DOT. They're the ones that handle all the parking enforcement. If it comes to the problem where that area is now drawn a crowd to hang out, then obviously reach out to me and we'll confer with parking enforcement, and then we'll try to come together with a plan of maybe we need to put in parking restrictions in that area where only after a certain hour you can't park there, like along some of the bluff areas. There's parking restrictions along the water side of the bluff. So that's right now too soon. We'll have to get to that when that problem does come up.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you, Marco. It also occurs to me that if you see a lot of cars still parked after sunset, it might prompt us to want to take a look inside the canyon. That might be a giveaway that there are still people inside. Okay, so Tamar, I want you to be able to talk about whatever's on your mind. Chris, 1 second. Let me just lay this out, and then I'll come back to you. Tamar, I want you to be able to address, whatever you think you can impart to this conversation. And also, before I do that, let's see if Chief Losarelli is back on. I know he's having some audio issues.
Miriam, he says he keeps trying, but it says he can't unmute.
I know, and he keeps actually exiting and coming back in, and I let him in, and it still doesn't fix his audio problems. I don't think it's on our end, but I'll keep looking. So Tamar and Chris, do you want to ask a question to Brian before we let him go? Although he's not going anywhere.
Yeah, I just want to pick up on what Marco was saying. And Marco, I'm happy to talk with you offline, and also Brian, but there are lots of issues and impediments to trying to get restricted parking, which I know a ton about, not the least of which is Coastal Commission, which doesn't want to allow it, at least as far as we know now. I don't know, that may change, but I'm happy to speak to anyone who's interested on this issue of parking because I know a lot about it. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you, Chris. All right, Tamar, you have the floor.
Hi, everybody. I'm going to be really quick since I don't have much to add. I'm Tamar Gallatin with the City Attorney's Office. I supervise the Neighborhood Prosecutor Program. I work with Veronica de la Cruz, who had another commitment tonight, so I'm filling in for her in case there were any questions for our office. Veronica and I spoke. We're going to do training for both LAPD and park rangers on all the relevant sections just to make sure if they do make an arrest, everything in there is what we need to have a criminal filing. And that's going to be our role right now. So with that, I will throw it back open to your other speakers.
Excellent. Thank you, Tamar. Thank you. And signage becomes a question for you guys, right? To have it be present and installed and in the right places, right?
Yes, signage is incredibly helpful with the prosecutions, especially for the very high fire hazard severity zones. So having the signage up and is always a key for us.
Okay, so I think I'm going to start a string between your office, LAPD Sharon, and LAFD and make sure we've got those signs up. Again, it's not quick and they're not free. So I want to make sure they're up around the perimeter. Yeah. Chief Everett, sound okay? Sharon, sound okay?
Yes, Everett concurs with that.
Okay. I do not have Chief Losarelli. So Chris, go ahead. Let's ask about, is there still a plan to build a bridge to PCH? If so, when is that happening? David Card, you might be able to set us off on that. Or Noah.
Okay, let me get back on the video here. Yes, last we heard at the PCH task force was that, if I can recall correctly, there is a unit within the Bureau of Engineering, City of Los Angeles, that is being assigned to that project. They will be starting or have started, it's still not clear in my mind, but I believe they will be starting pre-design on the bridge, because a year or so ago, we were able to get $11 million in the state budget for a pedestrian overcrossing over PCH connecting the new park to the beach. And it'll go just about to the right of where the bathrooms are, next to the major lifeguard station. That's where it will end up. And it'll that is something that will take a few years. And $11 million was the original estimate from BOE. As we all know, these things tend to increase in cost as time goes on. So hopefully we will have sufficient funds eventually to complete the bridge. As for the trail, I'll anticipate the next question. The trail connecting the mouth of Potrero Canyon to Temescal Canyon crossing signal is something that the Park Advisory Board has always wanted from the very start. It's in our 2008 report, as well as the bridge. And the reason for that is to provide more recreation, but most importantly, to provide another means of crossing and getting from the bottom of Potrero Park to safe crossing at the signal at Temescal. So that is something that is stalled at the moment. The City Bureau of Engineering and Rec and Parks have been negotiating with Caltrans for quite a long time, months, and a proposal has been made to Caltrans, and Caltrans is dragging its feet because the maintenance unit of Caltrans doesn't want to share that right-of-way area below the mouth of the canyon that it uses now for all of its road work on PCH, for landslide piles and for any of their major projects for piping and so on. So that is something we've talked to Assemblyman Bloom about, and State Senator Allen, and we will continue to speak with Allen and also with our new Assembly person, Jackie Irwin. And I'm anxiously awaiting the time when we can meet with her and express how important the funding is for the bridge and for that trail. There is a bill in Congress that was passed by the House of Representatives that is sitting in the U.S. Senate, sponsored by and presented originally by Congressman Ted Lieu. Unfortunately, we're losing Mr. Lieu, and we will have a new congressman, but hopefully that will get passed before the current term is up. And that provides $1.125 million for the trail if it's passed by the Congress and signed by the president. And we also got at the PCH task force a new estimate for the first time of what that trail would cost, and it's closer to $4 million rather than the original estimate of $1 or $1.5 million.
Okay, so Noah and then Chris, I see you, Chris. I also wanted to say that Assembly Member Irwin said she would have a staffer on the call who did actually come on in the beginning. I'm not sure how long they stayed, but they know this is on their radar. And also Congressman Sherman, who's our new rep, did reach out to me. His staff is ready to hear more, so we can bring them up to speed on all of this. All right, so Noah, then Chris, and then I think we'll wind down.
Yeah, just to show the level of responsiveness in our office, I put my email in the chat. Somebody just now emailed me a question that I guess they didn't want to put in the chat or in voice it. So I'm happy to answer that now. That I guess a couple of weeks ago, one of the signs on Potrero Canyon, the entrance to it, talks about safety for the contractor and their crew, like, hard hat safety and stuff like that. Ford EC, who is the contract team that is building Potrero Canyon, also builds tiny home villages in other parts of the city. They're one of the city contractors that does that. In their interest in saving money, they didn't reprint a brand new sign for those construction limitations. They just put a piece of tape over the thing that said tiny homes and installed a new thing that said Potrero Canyon Park, but still with the same site things for it. I guess somebody pulled off the piece of tape and it said tiny homes Potrero Canyon. For anybody that looks inside of Potrero Canyon right now. This isn't us trying to pull a fast one on you. It was just simply a mistake about signage. It was so that's the answer to that question. So hopefully that completely kills that.
Thank you. About the bridge?
Yeah, so about the bridge, incredibly grateful to Assemblymember Bloom and Senator Allen's office for getting $11 million in the state budget. Last I heard, that money from the state still needs to actually get to the city before the city engineers can actually start the first phase of design. And they kind of, the same thing with Potrero, they come up with a preliminary design, they present that to the community, and they do these community scoping projects. Because if we only have $11 million to build a bridge, and they present everybody with, here's an $11 million bridge, and everybody says, actually, we don't like this at all, we want this bridge, this bridge, then we need to get into a conversation about, do we need to be asking for more or finding more sources of funding? But I believe that we're just waiting for that money to actually get from the state to the city. But getting that money there, designing it, the schematics, the contracting it out, physically constructing it, I'll be honest, it's not going to be, I don't think it's going to be as consuming as the full grading and landscaping of Potrero. I mean, I'm not an engineer, but that is going to be the long-term plan to get access to Will Rogers Beach, which has always been the plan for this park and is conditioned in permits for this park from the Coastal Commission. The trail is going to be the faster and cheaper route to getting access to Will Rogers State Historic Park or State Beach. The way that it's going to work is at the mouth of the canyon right now is currently closed. There'll be a trail that actually follows already a natural walking path that miraculously has formed over the decades from the mouth of Potrero Canyon down to the intersection of Temescal Canyon and PCH. From there, people can safely cross PCH at Temescal Canyon. The recent estimates for that trail are at about, I think it was $3.3 million plus some contingency money. Last year, I personally applied for funding from Congressman Liu's office, which he thankfully was able to include in the appropriations bill, which, as Dave mentioned, was the 1.15 million. And then I want to say 3 weeks ago tomorrow, I also worked with the City Bureau of Engineering to apply for money in the upcoming budget cycle, specifically for the Palisades Pedestrian Trail for the difference. Mainly the reason for getting that, what's important is just getting enough money that a project manager can be assigned to this project to actually start making design plans. The Bureau of Engineering team that's been working on the park has kind of been doing, pro bono engineering services for this other project. But the trail is a condition of the park project from the California Coastal Commission. So that trail, the city is legally required to make, and it's our interest, and I believe in the decades of community meetings that were held by the Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee, it's the interest to have this be a coastal access point to really make Pacific Palisades increased access to the coast. And in terms of the negotiations with Caltrans, I don't think it's so much of a difference in them not wanting to. They do not want us to give us the land. We had talked about that briefly, a land swap with Caltrans. I know this is getting highly technical, but I'm trying to err on the side of over transparency for the sake of everybody knowing what's going on. They didn't want to do, Caltrans didn't want to do a land swap because they use that maintenance yard that's down there, not regularly, but in emergencies. So if there's flooding, landslides, things like that, it's a staging area and an area for their vehicles in that event. So they're actually okay with doing a lease or vacating it, something like that, so that the trail can go across their property, which is really the only safe, reasonable way of doing it without completely grading the toe of the slope, which would make it cost much more. The California Coastal Commission is okay with that too. It just means negotiating that with them and building plans that include the proper fencing, because they're not going to actually start considering that until we submit an application to lease that land. We're not going to be able to submit an application to lease that land until all the money is in place to actually commit to build that project. And we're not going to be able to have all that money in place and say, here's all the money that's in place and apply for that lease without also having a project manager assigned to it. So that's kind of the order of operations. We're waiting to get all the funding actually in an account, a specific account, to get a project manager. And just so that folks know, everything that I've just said to you is also in the transition memo that I've prepared for Councilmember-elect Tracy Park's staff.
And I was also going to say, I want to put you in touch with Nancy so that maybe you can reiterate all of this to Nancy as Assembly Member Irwin takes over. And I do welcome Nancy to the call. I also want to say that Nancy and Assemblymember Irwin have already been on the PCH task force meeting, so they're up to speed and they know that we need this funding and that this is happening. Okay, there are 3 hands or 4 hands up. It is 7:11, so everybody can stay on at their own discretion. I think we've heard from everybody we were going to hear from, other than Chief Lassarelli, which we weren't able to get on the phone, but we'll try to get him at another PPCC meeting. I'm going to start with Chris Spitz, and then Alan Goldsmith, you can go next. And then we'll go from there. I see you, Karen, and I see you, Rick, and I think Doug, or yeah. So let's go. Chris.
Okay, so real quick, I really appreciate Noah's additional explanation about the trail to Temescal Canyon, which is, something that has been desired, at least in terms of coastal access, for decades. I do know that the Coastal Commission offered recently this summer in writing to assist the city in negotiations with Caltrans. Do you know if that's happened? That's my first question. And are they continuing to assist? And number 2, there's some confusion about the amount of money that may be needed to build this trail, because I saw a recent progress report that the city submitted that I think has different numbers than some of the numbers you're now talking about. So I would appreciate clarification, not necessarily now, but maybe offline. So thank you.
Noah, or anybody who could answer this, what about cycling in the canyon, riding a bicycle? Because we had some conflict between the 2 versions of signs the last time we discussed this.
I might need to defer that question to Tamar from City Attorney's Office, or maybe Sonia or Rob, about what signs are actually being printed.
Okay.
I don't know if there's going to be a reference to no biking in the canyon. Hopefully Tamar can swoop in and save me, because I'm going to try and put my lawyer hat on for a quick second, and quickly take it back off. But technically, there's not biking allowed in city parks on trails, and these are considered trails. The reason for that is that there's it's liability reasons for the city, that you don't want people slipping, falling, doing things that they're not supposed to be doing on a trail. The city is indemnified to a certain degree or whatever. I don't know if it's strictly speaking indemnified, but they're held harmless, whatever the legalese is of it. So we can't post a sign that says parking or biking is allowed, and then if somebody does get injured, to then say, oh well, we can't, we have to be held harmless because technically there's a state law that says because it's a trail, people know that they're going on an uneven surface, like something like that. So that being said, within the cone of silence of the 72 people on this call, I don't imagine that there will be people that are using this trail that are going to have issues biking. There might be a sign that says no, no biking or limited biking in reference. Robert, thank you for joining and saving me here.
Absolutely. I remember.
Is that Rob from Rec and Parks?
No, it's not. It's a different Rob, and I'm going to mute them. Yes, the question about biking came up. If somebody can answer it tomorrow, I don't know if it's going to be you, but if somebody from RAP can answer it, that would be great. In the meantime, I'm going to let Carolyn ask her question until we get an answer on the biking.
Thanks. Noah, thank you for providing the information tonight. I have a question. Is the trail that you're talking about that's required for beach access, would that then be in lieu of the bridge that David Card is speaking about?
No.
Or is the bridge required too?
I don't recall the specifics as if the bridge is required. We were given $11 million by the state, and it is part of the community outreach that was done by the Pacific Palisades Community Advisory, the Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee. in the report that they submitted in 2008 and was part of advocacy by the city and neighborhood back in 2008 to get that funding for it. But I don't know if a bridge is specifically conditioned. I see Chris raising her hand, who's probably read the coastal permits.
Yeah, the
more than I
recent
have done.
coastal the amended permit does not require the bridge. It requires the city to apply for another permit for the bridge. The bridge was requested by the Potrero Canyon Community Advisory Committee, which is now an inactive committee, but it was required as part of the report, or at least recommended by that committee. And I assume that the city will apply for a permit for the pedestrian bridge at the appropriate time.
Because I think that, there should be more community input on that if it's not required. I think there are many people who would be opposed to a bridge and the spending of the money towards that, particularly given that there is access both at Chautauqua and Temescal. It seems like an absolutely unnecessary use of resources. And I would think, given the comments that have been made tonight, that people would be interested in using some of that money instead towards security and other resources that would be more beneficial and not redundant. And it seems that that would be unnecessary. My second question is for Tamar, and I'm wondering, Tamar, are there prosecutorial guidelines regarding prosecutions of people found after hours? Like, are there really going to be prosecutions of people for loitering or trespassing? And how is that going to be handled?
We filed them. So, yeah, there are guidelines that we've written for LAPD and the Rangers. We do training on them pretty regularly. They're not super complicated sections, but just want to make sure that, everything that we need is documented. I reviewed one today from a totally different area. So we do file these sections.
Okay.
Yeah, what happens after the filing is what we don't know, right? But you do file them.
Well, what happens after the filing is most people don't show up in court and a bench warrant's issued, and 2 years later they get arrested for something else and we get them into court, and then the judge tells them not to do it again and lets them go. So I mean, that's my little teeny piece of the criminal justice system, is we can file the case and we can explain the circumstances to the judge, but whether he or she takes it seriously or not, or the community does, it is a different story.
Thank you. Okay, I'm gonna, Karen Ridgely, we're, again, it's 7:18, so at some point we're gonna call this over, but Karen, I see Lucia and Rick. So we're gonna do Karen, Rick, and then Lucia. Karen Ridgely.
Well, my question before Alan asked it was about biking in the canyon. Was it going to be permitted? And also any motorized bicycles, like an electric bike or anything that's motorized, scooters and stuff. And if they were, what is the conflict between those pedestrians and the bicycle? Are there separate paths for them, or do they share the same path? And lastly, what is the planned connection for connection with the beach path into the canyon over that bridge at some point in the future? Is that part of the future plan for the biking path to be connected into the park? That's it. Thank you.
So electric bikes aren't allowed. Bikes are allowed, and normal pedal bikes are allowed in some parks. But like I mentioned, that this being a trail, they're technically not allowed to use bikes on the trail. I think that it's something that could be changed in the municipal code, though.
Okay, Rick, and so I'm just making note. I hear the biking issue. We will follow up. Rick, and then Lucia.
Thank you very much. Two very quick questions. First of all, and maybe I missed it, but I didn't hear anyone from RAP confirm that the police will have access to this park after dusk, and that seems pretty darn important to me. Can somebody confirm that?
Sonia, are you still on the call? I want to say I have no doubt that you guys will figure it out, and I don't know that Sonia. So correct me if I'm wrong, everyone. You all said that shouldn't be a problem and that LAPD will have access. Robert, I see you.
Yeah, so let me start with the bicycling question first. from my understanding, yes, no bicycles, no skateboards, no, I believe I saw something on a preliminary sign, no shopping carts, and so for sure, no bicycles on the trail and the park in general. And regarding LAPD access, that shouldn't be an issue. If they need, keys for the locks, that'll be, on the access gates for the road, we can provide them. If they don't have them already, it's our standard rec and park lock. So it'll be either a 4E67 or a 1C80. Those are the serial numbers on the keys that we utilize that we usually provide to police and fire.
Okay.
Excellent, thank you.
One other very quick question, I will stop. There are some of us who are interested in looking into private security for this park because of our concerns about it. There was mention that we can't just hire anybody we want. It has to be somebody approved by the city or authorized by the city. How do we find out who those groups are and how do we get contact information for them?
Sonia, I believe you were going to send those along, right?
Yeah, you can contact me and I'll work with Chief on that so we can get you the information.
Okay, thank you.
Sonia, is your contact information in the chat?
Not right now. I'm driving, but I can put it in, or Miriam can send it to them.
Yes,
My email.
I can send it. I will
Thank
do a recap and I will send all the contact information if that's okay with you. And
I'm dropping.
Rick, do you get our PPCC newsletters?
No, but I hear everything through Chris, so I'll get them one way or the other.
Excellent, excellent. All right, Lucia.
Yeah, thank you, Miriam. Great production here. Thank you. I appreciate it. Briefly, the bridge, I trust that the PPCC will be sending out any updates when these meetings are being held. I'm very opposed to it. Thank you.
Yes, I was going to say, stay tuned. If anything comes up about the bridge, I'm sure it'll come to PPCC and you can stay tuned. And Diane, I'm very mindful of your nodding and shaking. So we will deal.
Yeah, I have. I'm sorry. One last thing.
Diane, yes, Lucia.
Count on bikes. There will be bikes on that trail. That's all. I just wanted to warn everybody. The kids are going to use that trail with bikes.
Okay,
So,
Diane, thank you, Lucia. Yeah, that came up, whether or not it was on the sign or there would be bikes and how they would use it. The pathway is 12 feet wide. It's made of soil cement, so it's reasonably hard. We shall see. Diane Wolfberg, you have the floor.
Yeah, looks like I can be heard. Okay, you all, almost everybody on here knows how we feel and how George felt about that being a park accessible to bicycles for use. So my question now is, what if you walk a bicycle along the trail? If it says no bicycles, does that mean you can't bring them in the gate, or does that mean you can't ride them on the trail?
I'm pretty sure the verbiage is about active. So I think it's no bicycling. Same thing with no skateboarding. So technically you can have a skateboard. It's open carry for transportation.
I don't think that we've gotten the last version of the sign, but the previous version that we did see, and the only change was going to be the timing. I think it said no bicycling. But Sonia or maybe Rose, when there is a final sign, can someone send it over to us?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, we can do that. Yes.
I thank you all. I greatly appreciate everyone being on this phone call.
Question,
Yes.
Is that a dog? Can dogs be off leash on that park? Or I'm just curious how that works out.
No, it's not a dog.
Dogs can only,
park.
Just to be clear, because this is an issue hopefully not at this park, but it's an issue at every single park. The only areas in the entire city where dogs can be off leash are in city dog parks. So dogs cannot be off leash, and even dogs that are on leash.
You know, this is the Palisades, right?
So I want to say we'll probably have a similar meeting for
follows
dogs on a
rules.
leash. Yes, that will be around the corner, no doubt. Yes, there is a motion to create a dog park here, a conversation that's been had for about a decade. No doubt we'll have a similar meeting for that. But yes, no dogs on a leash, even though the city might provide the dispensers for the plastic bags, dogs do stay on a leash. we'll make all of that clear. Again, I thank you all, especially city folks who made it to the call. Thank you. Thank you to all of our guests, people who spoke, imparted their knowledge, everyone with their questions. I appreciate everybody coming on the call, and we will continue to monitor things and be the voice of the community. So feel free to reach out to the PPCC with anything. That's info@packvalleycc.org. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Thank you all.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, guys. Thank you very much for answering the questions. I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.